Welcome to Blooducation Baristas, where we're serving you piping hot transfusion news and now conversations on advancing medicine topics. My name is Daniela Hermelin, and I'm the Chief Medical Officer of Impact Life Blood Center and an Assistant Professor of Pathology at St. Louis University School of Medicine. And I am so privileged to be bringing you today Lieutenant William Bullock from South Texas Blood and Tissue. We're going to be talking about such an important topic, especially as we ride from yesterday's National First Early Responders Day. It's such a great topic to bring about. We're going to be talking about the subject of a project that was started in South Texas Blood and Tissue known as Hero in Arms. It's a whole blood program really developed to help us in recruiting donors that can provide universal blood products for pre-hospital transfusion. And so it is an honor and a privilege to have my friend and colleague, Lieutenant Bullock, join us today to speak about this very, very special program. Lieutenant Bullock, thank you for joining us today. Right in the ambulance.
You bet. Thank you. I picked the ambulance as the setting, hoping it would be a little different than some of the other guests and give you a little glimpse of what I do day to day.
Wow. Yeah, it's looks like a little bit of a tight space. I see that you spend a lot of time in there rescuing people. And but it's an amazing thing that you do. And I thank you. Thank you for all that you do. Let's just take a moment to celebrate and honor all the EMS and first responders. So thank you for all that you do.
And here is one representative to many countless individuals that, dedicate their life to life safety and being the first on the scene of the worst days of the lives of most people. So just a privilege and an honor to have done it for 23 years and hopefully no end in sight soon. I really, really, really appreciate it. And thank you for having me today. I appreciate everything that y'all have afforded me this stage so that we can talk about the Heroes in Arms and what tremendous work they do.
Well, we would love to jump right in and maybe just start understanding its history. And again, this program, Hero in Arms, being able to recruit and collect blood, O positive blood from individuals for, as you're mentioning, for situations where blood is needed at the site, which we're calling pre-hospital transfusion now, getting blood on board, ambulances and helicopters. And really what we're talking about is whole blood. So it's really a whole blood program that you and your colleagues have developed in San Antonio. And we'd love to learn kind of the history of this. How did it get started?
You bet. You set it up for me nicely. And there is a lot of credit that goes out to many, many folks throughout South Texas and the nation. So if I can step back just a little bit and kind of go from the origins in the early 2000s, actually, Dr. Donald Jenkins, a surgeon here in San Antonio, former military doctor, really saw firsthand the value with soldiers who were injured with getting them whole blood nearest to the point of injury as possible, with some tremendous outcomes in terms of how those soldiers were able to rehab and really recover from their injuries. And when he came to San Antonio and kind of brought that philosophy with him to the trauma center here in town, lo and behold, where he worked, they started wanting whole blood because that's what he liked to use and that's what he was used to. Fast forward to a conference where he met Elizabeth Waltman, the CEO at the time of South Texas Blood and Tissue, and they started talking about the possibility of getting blood in the pre-hospital setting in the civilian sector. And it was really the right timing, the right marriage worked out perfectly. And she basically said, yes, I think we can do this. And the theme I want to kind of come back to is everyone's saying yes, because we all know that no is the easy answer. Like that really is the truth. To say yes is going to require an investment of time, effort, some process changes, probably some finances and so forth. So that was really the tip of the spear, if you will. And then other people needed to be incorporated, obviously, to get something like this off the ground. And we had the medical director at South Texas Blood and Tissue analyze the idea, and she gave the thumbs up on it. Dr. Samantha Gomez Nogasokyo, who I can say has probably changed EMS more significantly than maybe any other physician since I have been in the business for 23 years. Pre-hospital whole blood truly is a game changer when it comes to interventions in EMS. So a lot of credit to Dr. G. I don't know if she quite knew what she was getting into when she signed off, but she really has changed EMS throughout the nation now at this point as it moves on. We did need to get some buy-off from my medical director. Texas is a delegated practice state. Dr. CJ Winkler and David Miramontes, the San Antonio Fire Department med directors, thought that it was a tremendous idea. My EMS chief at the time, Mike Stringfellow, now Ronaldo Garza, also have been huge advocates for the program. My former fire chief, Charles Hood, and my present chief, Valerie Frosto, have been ardent supporters of the program in San Antonio, and have always said that if anyone reaches out to myself, and I know they reach out to you, Dr. Hermelin, hey, can you tell us how to do a program? Can you tell us about your program? And I by no means want to say that San Antonio's is the only way or even the best way. It's just the way that we've done it. I have to give some credit, or a lot of credit, to Chief Eric Bank, ESD 48 over there in the Katy, Texas area. When I was cutting my teeth on the logistics and how this could be operationalized, he really had laid the groundwork, because they were already fully operational in that quadrant of Texas. So he mentored me just sensational, like without bounds. And I really appreciate that. And then the last thing I have to mention is we had to convince the city of San Antonio that this was a good idea, because I know there's been a lot of discussion about funding and things like that. And it was going to cost some money. And my city manager, Eric Walsh, and our deputy city manager, Maria Villa Gomez, decided that this was going to be a great use of resources. And the proof in the pudding. We've transfused over 1,500 units thus far in 6 years. And estimates are a save ratio of over 50%. So I think basically 1,000 lives have been saved since the advent of this program. One that I think is the last kind of point I'll make about the history is you have your provider, the San Antonio Fire Department, and there's over 25 other agencies now in South Texas that are doing this. We just kind of started it, and it has really caught on. We have our provider with South Texas Blood and Tissue. But I really want to give some credit to the South Texas Regional Advisory Council, affectionately known as STRAC throughout the nation. That is a byproduct of the Department of Health and Emergency Management here in Texas. And it really helps to have the involvement of a third party that has some investment in success of the program, but can help facilitate conversations and process improvements and things like that. So we have a third party that's willing to honestly take the lead, and Tracy Rose, the program facilitator, says herd the cats, but all together. I have to give a shout out to Randy Schaefer, Dr. Randy Schaefer, retired colonel in the U.S. Army, for really helping me with the logistics and the efficiency that we'll talk about in the program as well, and the executive director at STRAC, Eric Epley. So I know that was a lot of names I threw at you, but that really is how complex the system is. But
yes, absolutely.
All of those people gave yes, and that's how we got what we got now.
Yeah, I love that. You know, my head is spinning on the numbers of people that were involved. You know, to first talk about those groundbreaking individuals who had tremendous courage. Chief, Dr. Jenkins, Dr. Gomez, you were saying the CEO, Waltman. Those are the people that were visionaries. But what it also tells me, and now you say San Antonio doesn't do it best, but what I think you do best is you model trust. And that is something that I've always really admired about your facility, is how you work together in collaboration, and your process is built on a process of trust. So that's something that I've really noticed, and I'm a big fan of both Dr. Gomez and Dr. Jenkins. And I think that the way that they've worked together to do this, and you spoke about investment. Well, it's the investment to save lives. So how could you go wrong there? So, yeah.
One thing I wanted to add also, because you absolutely right in terms of trust and everyone getting to know one another. The establishment of a high-paced, high-caliber program is regular meetings. You're going to have to break bread together. You're going to have to discuss concerns and air those things and work it out. We have regular meetings where everyone in the region that carries blood gets together, and we work through all those things: equipment, fidelity, cold chain logistics and management, all of those things. One hint I can give to my EMS folks out there that may be entertaining a program of their own. Most EMS agencies carry controlled substances, narcotics, opioids, and so forth. You have a process in place to track all of that. When you explain that process to a potential blood supplier or other provider that you may get in a relationship with, that really solidifies the fact that EMS is used to handling a highly regulated product that needs tracking and there's a process there. I do think that's helped for sure.
Mm-hmm. So you were just saying that, for those EMS partners who are interested in carrying blood on the ambulances, you're saying make that analogous to carrying a controlled substance. Is that right? If they're interested, is that kind of where that analogy takes? Okay. Well, I was wondering if maybe we could even talk a little bit about whole blood and its rise in popularity, and how we're seeing that become the resuscitation product of choice. We talk a little bit about going back to the future, and whole blood was really the first blood product that ever was. But as we moved historically, we learned how to separate blood into its parts. And we give blood based on its component therapy. So we can break it apart. Whole blood can be broken into red cells, platelets, plasma. Plasma can be converted into cryoprecipitate. Now we're saying, let's go back and let's just transfuse whole blood. And so I'm wondering, can you help for those that are listening in, why whole blood is becoming the product of choice within, particularly in the pre-hospital setting?
Sure. And I think component therapy absolutely has an appropriate place in the hospital setting, depending on patient needs. But the world we live in, someone's in severe hemorrhagic shock, maybe from trauma or possibly from a medical origin, a GI bleed or complicated OBGYN call. It's very intuitive. I think a second grader would understand that if someone loses blood on the side of the street after a bad accident, the thing they need is probably the exact same thing that they lost. Dr. Jenkins says it always succinctly, like, give them what they're bleeding. And I think in some EMS circles, when I started, I was like, why do we keep saying whole blood? Why don't we just say blood? And then I understood, okay, it typically or quite often is broken down into its components. So we in the South Texas region, we do give low titer O positive blood. So I know some questions arise. Well, why aren't you using O negative? I thought that was universal. And Dr. Hemlin, I'll throw it back at you and say, why don't we use O negative?
Okay, well, I think we'll just start with the idea that you're collecting O donors.
Yes.
We're collecting O low titer whole blood. We'll talk about the pause part in just a second. But to be clear, the Hero in Arms program is a program recruiting O donors that are what we would call low titer. And the whole blood that's collected is purposed for pre-hospital transfusion. Is that correct?
It is either purpose for pre-hospital or directly to our trauma center to be used on patients in severe hemorrhagic shock, one or the other.
Got it. Okay. So now the question was, we're going to be collecting from O-pos donors rather than O-neg. Well, we know that the O part is truly universal, meaning anybody, when we don't know their blood type, can receive the universal donor, the O donor. So normally we learn in our studies that the positive part could cause incompatibility. But I think what we've come to understand is that only 15% of the population is negative, meaning D antigen negative. And so we are not actually risking a very large population when we transfuse O positive blood, because the chances of actually causing what we call alloimmunization, or the formation of antibodies, can be rare. And so because we have a larger O-pos donor population, we are going to use that as our foundations for increasing the blood supply. I think that that's fair to say, and probably the reason why we feel comfortable transfusing, and more is coming out. And I believe very soon, in November, just in a few weeks, there is actually a meeting in Bethesda that's going to discuss this exact topic, and coming out with even guidelines to discuss if we're transfusing, especially to women of childbearing age, because that's why we worry about it. We don't want to cause alloimmunization in those. But what I've come to understand is that a woman doesn't want to be deprived of receiving blood products for the risk of something that may not occur. So more to come in this area. But getting back to your program, it sounds like you're recruiting O donors that are O-pos. Could they be O-neg?
The O-negs in our system are allocated to usually cancer patients and children with very rare disease. So typically those are our super rare donors, if you will. So those go to very specified individuals.
Got it. And that are low titer. Now, yes. I do remember just a few years ago, it used to be called Brother in Arms, but now it's called Hero in Arms. And I believe that's because now you recruit both men and women to collect. So tell us a little bit about that.
I will. So we really touched on a lot of background, but our Heroes in Arms is the name of the group of donors who come in and donate, and that's the blood that's placed either on ground ambulances or helicopters or in the ER. And just to give a little summary of the life journey of one of those units, the donor comes in and donates. The blood is tested, and then it's allocated out into the pre-hospital setting somewhere in the South Texas region. For 2 weeks, it stays on an ambulance or helicopter. If we transfuse in that time, then the EMS agency will contact South Texas Blood and Tissue and obtain a new unit. If it's not transfused in the 2 weeks' time, it's returned to South Texas Blood and Tissue. And the whole time that it's been in EMS possession, dozens of people throughout the region, physicians and EMS practitioners and hospital staff, can monitor the temperatures and the condition of the blood the whole time it's in EMS's possession. But at that point, it's then received by South Texas Blood and Tissue and then reallocated to our level 1 trauma center, University Hospital, where Dr. Jenkins is a physician, and Dr. Grebon, the pathologist there at University Hospital, is the one that really says, yes, we can do this. We can assume some of these units that are about 40% of the way through their life cycle at that point. we're super proud of that system. Thank you, Strack and Tracy and Eric and Randy for the development of this, because we have a waste ratio right about 1%. So whoever comes in to donate, that blood will be transfused either in their pre-hospital setting or the hospital setting. So really super proud about that.
I love that. What you're saying is that you guys have created essentially a no wastage system, because that is what I think scares people. You get blood on the ambulance and helicopters, but if it's not used, it's wasted. So how can you develop a system where it gets rotated and ensure that that product gets used, right? It's this precious resource. And you guys, again, going back to that idea of trust.
Yep.
And developing a system where blood is monitored, temperature is maintained, and we know that is a very clear-cut system, that the blood that's not used can then be returned or brought to the hospitals and used, and I'm sure used, certainly.
Absolutely. And just to be clear, because we had talked about O positive earlier, the blood that the arms are donating is low titer O pos, but it's non-leuko reduced, so it allows for the CPDA1 bag preservative, which will give it the 35-day shelf life, which allows us to do the rotational system that we do. I know some other systems or some other blood agencies throughout the country do leuko reduce their blood, and therefore they end up with a 21-day product. And I think the same system can be tweaked, to have a rotation like that. But we are fortunate to have that elongated time. And I think we have an annual really hardcore discussion about, should we leuko reduce? We look at the pluses and minuses. A lot of physicians, much more intelligent and educated than I, really get into some heated discussions about it. But it's great. That's what makes the program grow and so forth. One thing that we also
can we take a second and just talk about what you just said? So that is very, very unique about your program, is that you're trying to offer an extended shelf life, meaning whole blood today has a 21-day shelf life for if it's non-leuko reduced. But what you've done is you've extended it to 35 days by not leuko reducing the product. So for those of us, or those who's listening, that are like, well, what is leuko reduction? So leuko reduction is a step that happens after collection. It's really called a manufacturing step, that we literally take a filter, and that filter was developed so that it can drain all of the elements within the blood, but remove the white cells. And historically, we've learned that the white cells in a blood product could actually cause transfusion reactions. They also may transmit cytomegalovirus, CMV. But it sounds like within your blood center, balancing the risks of that, what we would call immune modulation, in those that need that blood at hand, may be more important. I think that there will be a lot of, talk and discussion about this within the transfusion medicine community. I recently did have what I call my blood education Tati just a few weeks ago, Dr. Neil Bloomberg, discussing leuko reduction. Now, he actually is a proponent of whole blood, because he thinks that you would be actually providing more compatible transfusions in the trauma setting. But I think that there may be discussion about the leuko reduction step. So more to come with that, I think. And I love the fact that you guys do take time to study. We're going to be studying the impact. We don't really understand totally the clinical consequence, if there is one. So sometimes we do things, we understand its value, but here we're going to be studying more and more the value in this population, in this setting. Is that fair?
I would just add also that depending on the filter that's used to pull the white cells out, you are going to platelet function. There's a little debate about how much, but a percent reduction in platelets we don't really want that in a trauma, in a hemorrhagic shock setting. We want all the platelets we can. So that also, I think, is food for thought.
Absolutely, because you want everything in that blood. You want the platelets, you want the plasma. Very good. Yeah. So this is an interesting area. I know that that's not what this discussion is about, but thank you for sharing that with us, because I do think that makes your program unique, and other people would like to model it. There was just a letter, and I happen to be an author about proposing non-Luca reduced whole blood from an operational standpoint. But I do think it's fair to say we need to monitor it and make sure we're doing the right things. And we will continue to do that.
Absolutely. Now, I have a tendency to get off track. I was still talking about our heroes in arms, and I kind of went down the rabbit hole. But if I could, them some credit here, and really, the truth of the matter is, if you don't have this dedicated donor base, there will not be a program. They support our program. They're extremely loyal. These donors come almost twice as often as other donors in the South Texas system. They understand the value of the product. Our community outreach team does an excellent job of sending text messages or emails that your blood ended up on a San Antonio ambulance, on this date, and letting the donors know kind of the final destination and things like that. We have over 6,800 heroes in arms, and it was brothers in arms from 2022. And in January of 2023, we began including female donors in the process. And I think that originally, I don't want to speak out of turn because this is not my specialty, but was, never pregnant females were kind of our target. And if they were had a positive pregnancy, then we needed to confirm a negative HLA test. And I'm getting into Dr. Hermelin talk here, but that was why we initially didn't have a female as part of the program, but now we do, and knocking on 1,000 donors in Heroes in Arms with our female donors. So super proud of that.
Well, I want to thank you for bringing the conversation back to probably one of the most important elements, which is the hero part. And our heroes are the donors. I get a little emotional when I start thinking about our donors. And, 6,800 donors within a pool, that's incredible. And like you're saying, these are really loyal donors that want to, continuously donate for this actual mission, both men and women. Can you tell me, was this originally, though, started within a military framework, meaning even like civilian military, or not? I'm just curious, the individuals that do get recruited, do they have any affiliation historically, and has that evolved?
To my knowledge, I'm not certain, but I can tell you that the donors with former military and first responders, because we're out transfusing it, we see it. I really did kind of a poor job of introducing myself. So I'm 23 years with the San Antonio Fire Department, EMS supervisor for 8, but I've performed over 100 pre-hospital transfusions myself, and there's 23 supervisors like myself in San Antonio, and we've seen it, firsthand with our eyes, patients in really bad shape, very extremely diminished GCS, wake up, try to pull out their intubation tube, just these dramatic changes in condition that just almost unbelievable, but just so incredibly powerful. And every year, I'm very proud to say South Texas Blood and Tissue, the community outreach team, Francine Pina and Roger Ruiz, and they all get together and they research through news stories that they see in the local media of a pre-hospital transfusion that was really significant. In 2023, we brought together a survivor from the Uvalde shooting who obtained Heroes in Arms blood, and she got to meet the donors. blood that she received in the pre-hospital setting and then on a flight from Uvalde to San Antonio. And it was extremely emotional, very, very powerful. And we invite other Heroes in Arms donors to come witness this reunion between the EMS crews and the recipients and the donors. In 2024, we had a patient in severe hemorrhagic shock from OBGYN complications, and we were able to transfuse pre-hospital blood to her. She pulled through and has since had her rainbow baby. Three months later, she got pregnant, and she came with her newborn to the reunion, and she got to meet the 87-year-old gentleman who donated on her behalf. And the quote that he gave when he got to meet the young lady that received his blood was, he's been on the planet for 87 years, and he had never had a feeling like he did getting to give her a hug and see that she was okay. So just really powerful stuff.
Absolutely.
People see the good work that they're doing, but I absolutely do not want to diminish every blood donation. Every single one counts. The hospitals need that blood. There's so many people that have surgeries and serious medical conditions, leukemia and sickle cell, that rely on those donations, for their health. So every single one counts. But I do have a soft spot for our Heroes in Arms because I donate that blood out there in the field. We will write some personalized handwritten thank you notes sometimes. They get challenge coins on the year they join. We've got some great decals that they can put out, on objects they have. We've got some Heroes in Arms only other swag. We've got a coffee tumbler here since we are with the baristas. But different things to make them feel very special and appreciated because we really want them to know that they're part of a very elite group, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like you've created just an incredible program in terms of being able to fully thank the donor and share that vein to vein experience, for, like you're saying, that experience of being able to connect the donor and the recipient, but also the EMS provider. Wow, that is so special because truly you are part of that vein to vein experience. And even more so when you're saying firsthand, you see the impact it makes. So not only are you a responder, but you're also a donor. And so you just, total full picture there. So beautiful. Yeah.
I am the beneficiary of so many other individuals' work, as I mentioned in the beginning, that said yes. It wouldn't happen if all those people didn't trust one another, as you'd mentioned, and work through the process. Because there are some complications. When I've talked to other EMS and some blood centers, they're like, "Wow, that's a lot of moving parts," and
yeah.
You have to have champions in every corner, really.
Yeah, well, when I was in San Antonio in February, I was gifted this beautiful pin. I love it so much.
Yep.
And I believe that this is something you guys created for the rodeo. Is that right? It's a parade of some sort?
It was for our fiesta. Every April, a big fiesta parade, and the Heroes in Arms get their own unique medal every year, medal collection for the parade business down here. So yeah, you have one there proudly displaying it.
I love my pen. Yeah, it's gorgeous. But to know that you guys are in the fiesta, it speaks to how you're in the community. Like you are part of this community so much. You have your own pin, and when I think about how it started in San Antonio, and you mentioned that it's now expanded to other regions of Texas.
It has. We're super proud. The whole, we call it the consortium, has reached out to they've reached out to us, and the answer has always been yes. Some late nights for sure, a lot of emails and PowerPoints and phone calls and all those things, all those great things. But our friends up at Austin Travis County just celebrated their 500th transfusion. So
oh wow.
they're running great with their program, and our friends in Lubbock, the EMS system there has a very robust transfusion system. And I can tell you personally, and I think maybe you can definitely relate to this, Dr. Hermlin. This program has afforded me personally, the opportunity to meet so many sensational individuals that are so dedicated about life safety. Chief Charles Croyle over at West Palm Beach EMS, they were one of the first folks that reached out to our consortium to learn about, incorporating a program into their system. And now I know they're teaching people. So people that we helped out, 4 or 5 years ago are now leading a coalition in Florida in that instance, and different folks, just really very excited. And I love that the answer is always yes. How can we help? Let's get this done. So that's really neat.
I can't agree with you more. You're EMS, I'm blood center, transfusion medicine. It has been a privilege to be involved in this area of transfusion medicine. I absolutely adore everyone I come across, just people with the same value system, which is essentially I want to save a life, so this is such a harmonious relationship. And what I've talked about before is that I think it also is driving incredible innovation that I've never seen. So I think it personally can change and shape our industry for the good. And I just, healthcare in general is really shifting. And I think that this is really a paradigm of how healthcare can work together. And so, so I'd love for you, you've touched upon some of that, but, especially when we talk about consortiums and you talk about all the individuals and the key stakeholders that are necessary to make this happen, I think that it's really a reflection of how healthcare can work to really help other people.
Absolutely. I think the regular meetings, like we mentioned, and we don't have meetings just for the sake of having meetings, but we want to QA ourselves, like let's improve the process and expand as other people have been interested in the program. And I agree with the innovation, no doubt. We've got, new tubing, new warmers, new coolers, all kinds of things that technology is providing some process, fidelity for temperatures in coolers. And we use GroupMe regularly here in South Texas. Proactive approaches when we do have our big fiesta and other really large events in San Antonio where an extremely large population is going to gather in the city. San Antonio EMS will now proactively check out, if you will, large cache of blood from South Texas Blood and Tissue and pre-position blood units around that event. So in case there is some sort of disaster or mass casualty situation, we've already got the resources in place to provide assistance to
wow.
those. Yeah,
that's so forward thinking.
Yeah, I think it's great too for muscle memory to get all the players normalize. Maybe getting a whole lot of blood very quickly. If I could touch just for a moment on Uvalde, which is always a delicate subject. There's no doubt about that. But I think the consortium would say that we did what we could on that day. 67 minutes after the reports that there was an incident going on there, blood was at the scene of Robb Elementary and at the local hospital in Uvalde. And that could not have taken place if we didn't already have the pre-existing system and the meetings and the discussions that we'd had, along with the collaboration from the local EMS helicopter provider, our air providers. I almost filmed this today from the helo pad at South Texas Blood and Tissue. I think that South Texas Blood and Tissue is the only blood center in the country that has a helo pad as part of their property. So on that day, a request for blood came in, and it was literally checked out, standard process, but efficiently. Large quantity was loaded onto the helicopter that left the trauma center and landed at South Texas Blood and Tissue, picked up the blood and warmers, and then made its way to Uvalde. simultaneous to that, you had EMS agencies all through South Texas that carried blood on their ambulances. So when they heard there was a mass casualty incident, responded to the scene with blood on their unit. So we actually ended up with a lot more blood than we thought we were going to have, which, was it's always great to have more resources. But the level of coordination, sophistication, to do that in an efficient manner is just really a tribute to the whole region. And I stand here before you as just one ambassador of the program. But I have to double back to the donors, because if we don't have the donors, we don't have a program. There is no synthetic blood. For the first 20 or 18 years of my career, it was saline. And it's a volume replacement. But, we know it doesn't carry oxygen. There's no clotting factor. Probably pretty good data that says too much saline is going to be negative for the patient. So the fact that we're equipped with this product because of the donors it's unbelievable. It's a game changer.
Going back to the heroes, the donors, if someone was interested in donating blood, what would be the process for them? Is it any different in the recruitment strategy? Do they have any different donor eligibility that's different from normal blood collection?
No, when you come in and donate, if you're O positive and you're not already in the program, we will test the blood to see what the titer level is. And that's another, point of discussion that a lot of folks around the nation may have in terms of what is low titer. San Antonio uses a level of titer reading of 256 because that's the military standard. And one of our nicknames beside the Alamo City is Military City, USA. We have a lot of military bases here. So that's what we use. But I know different jurisdictions might use a different, line or cutoff. But if you come back with a low titer result, our community outreach team will shoot you a call or an email that says, "Hey, you qualify. Would you like to join?" And they're very knowledgeable about the benefits of the program, so they can have a pretty sophisticated conversation with the donor if they have some more questions on, now, what is this and how is it going to help and things like that. And usually it's embraced with open arms, like they want to come right back, and you need to wait for 56 days, but we'll get you in there, so really just great stuff.
And so are they called often to, how does it work in terms of just maintaining a steady blood supply?
So that goes along with the transparency throughout the region. We have a PAR level that's been established by South Texas Blood and Tissue, and the surgeons from University Hospital and the EMS agencies do have a little bit of input on that. And every day, a group me thread goes out so that everyone in the region, pre-hospital and hospital, can see the number of Heroes in Arms units on the shelves and even the number of appointments following days. So we all have fidelity on that. And the system is very nimble. If there's heavy mass transfusion at the hospital, our community outreach team will get a little bit more robust with calling donors and asking to donate. And then it does work the other way. If we have a very strong cache and it just doesn't look like that's exactly what the whole system needs, there are times occasionally where a Heroes in Arms donor will be asked, could you give a quote standard donation where it is broken into components, as you'd mentioned, because that's what will community best. So the donors' loyalty, they seem to always want to help out in any capacity, but there truly is a lot of fidelity from all the folks that are involved to see how prepared are we in the case of something large. Like, there's been internal discussions throughout the region with Halloween coming up this week. It's a traditionally high EMS call time, so we want to make sure that we're prepared if there's something that creeps up there. So I'll stop bragging on it, but I'm proud of everything that goes on, and I'm so proud of the heroes donors themselves. The chances when I get to pen a personalized thank you note is like the best part of my day, to put that in the mail. And I know I get a lot of mail, and rarely do you get a note that says you saved a life today. So I think it's powerful.
That's beautiful. I do go crazy with your idea that you have a dashboard. I always say, for my birthday, I want a dashboard to know what blood is in the hot. We're a little bit behind, I think, in understanding the needs and the demands when we don't have an integrative system. But it sounds like you've created one that's specific for the program, and it's so essential. So kudos to you guys for doing that. Um, I wanted to ask you, as of right now, Hero in Arms, it sounds like it's only within the state of Texas. Is that right?
It's actually just with South Texas Blood and Tissue, but I think our affiliate blood companies, We Are Blood in Austin and Gulf Coast in Houston, Carter and Dallas, they have a group membership that's providing blood to pre-hospital services. But I think there's different names based on your niche of Texas. There is a task force that's been established by Governor Abbott here in Texas because he would like to see blood all throughout the state, not just the major metro areas. And we've got some really brilliant folks working on that. My med director, CJ Winkler, and the executive director at STRAC, Eric Epley, are the two chairs of that task force. And we're trying to get it to every corner of the state. It's interesting. I think we're at 181 and counting. Eric Bank may tell me I'm behind, but about 180 EMS agencies in the country are carrying pre-hospital blood. Some of it's whole, some of it might be red blood cells, but not saline is the key. But there's 23,000 EMS agencies throughout the country, so we're really only at 1% at this point. So we've got a lot of room to go and expand. But the innovators are out there, and I think also we're judicious with the allocation of the blood. In San Antonio, we run 300,000 calls a year. And we have 8 units out and about in the city, and we cover about 500 square miles. So, my superiors and the data analysts said we don't need blood on every single ambulance. We put it on the supervisor's truck and a few select special operations ambulances, and we feel comfortable with that level of coverage. So, I think strategy to determine where it would best be used is a great plan to use what you need, but not take too much.
That's brilliant. Yeah, and I think, again, having that innovative software and using technology to just own that process and make it better and smoother and more efficient. And we're going to see that more and more. Are there thoughts of expanding it beyond the state of Texas? I have to say, it'd be an incredible national project. It's such an incredible idea and concept. You guys have really worked through all of its parts. Is it something that is that even talked about? That it become
organically, we've touched a lot of points. I mentioned Chief Croyle there in Florida, but Dr. Willem in the Los Angeles area with San Diego Blood, they're working a way to try to get something established in Southern California. Like I said, organically, it's spreading. The state of Colorado, Dr. Scott Barney is a huge advocate, and it's got it established in Colorado Springs, King County, Washington, various points in Indiana, Georgia, North Carolina, very trend-setting. Kentucky. So just parts of the country, it's happened organically. Like I said, my superiors say the answer is always yes if someone reaches out or contacts us. But we touched on the relationship between your local blood supplier and the EMS agency is something we can't do for you, but we can show you how ours worked. So I would love to see it get large. I mean, it would be incredible. And there are national initiatives like the Pre-Hospital Whole Blood Transfusion Initiative Coalition. That's quite the title. But Dr. Cromer is working on the national level to get take down roadblocks, like for things like standards and regulatory hurdles and compensation. That's always an issue to look at as well. So there's kind of little push points all over that are moving it along.
Yeah,
But we would
absolutely.
love to have some national representation at the highest level for sure.
Well, there's certainly national initiatives, like you mentioned, the Pre-Hospital Transfusion Coalition. They're doing tremendous work. They have 5 pillars, education being one of them. And but I happen to just love your name, Hero in Arms. Like that how can you replicate that? So it's just such a great name, such a great program. But I do want to mention that, and I learned about it actually through my own med students. It was 3 or 4 years ago, where I had a first year med student that was in the military hands, and he was really interested in getting blood on ambulances and helicopters. And I didn't know much about this. He taught me, and he and one of his med school colleagues, they went to San Antonio. You guys offer some seminars and courses. Is that correct?
You are absolutely correct. So the consortium, a lot of the key players that I'd mentioned, dedicate 2 days out of their lives, away from their standard duties. And we do, it's STRAC, South Texas Regional Advisory Council, is the host, and they facilitate a fully comprehensive program that will incorporate blood provider, EMS agency, like I said, kind of agnostic third party state administrator to help make sure everything runs well as your trauma center. And we've hosted 7 at this point, usually once or twice a year, 2 day. And I don't know of anyone that's walked away and said, I didn't learn much here. A lot of people are very surprised at what the content is. It's not all about blood. As you mentioned, a lot of it is about trust and the collaboration of how things work. But we're very proud of that course, and we offer it and try to give every nuance of a program establishment.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You guys really are the pioneers of this topic. I personally feel that way. And you have been so generous of your knowledge. I just want to thank you publicly for that. You personally, and the consortium and all of the individuals you touched upon. And that just is a clear sign of the power of what you're doing and the value system, and how you're so anchored in really just trying to help others, invest in others, and make healthcare better for all people. Thanks for providing those courses. And we have a few minutes left, and I wanted to offer some time if anyone is listening, if they have any questions. While we're waiting for anyone to ask questions from the audience, you and I have been involved in the pre-hospital, out-of-hospital ABB standards that hopefully will be published, in the new year. And I'm just curious how you think that may help to, catapult pre-hospital transfusion and maybe provide some of the infrastructure, and I would say maybe even build trust in this area.
No, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. I think EMS they're thirsty for this document because they want to peruse it and they want to be good stewards of the program and they want to save lives. And it may not be a blueprint for the entire thing, but the standards are a great framework for the necessary components that are need to be there for EMS med directors and the blood pathologists. And the practitioners themselves and so forth. I was highly honored to be part of it. There were a lot of very esteemed physicians, in the group, and having the pre-hospital blend with the pathologists and the hospital folks, I thought was really unique and provided a lot of great discussion and analysis of the worlds kind of converging. Because I think when we very first started, we were making a new version of the out of hospital standards, and pretty quickly decided, oh, there needed to be a fork in the road and kind of two different sets, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think at some point they may overlap out of hospital, pre-hospital. And so getting everyone in the room for that was really fun. But you're right, it was pretty amazing to have individuals like Dr. Jenkins, Dr. Schaefer, yourself, Dr. Yeager in the room talking about pre-hospital transfusion and creating those standards, because the time is now and we really do need them. And I think it will really help allow this to go to the next level. I really do, especially when it comes to being able to provide the guidelines so that blood centers, transfusion services, and EMS can do things in a very aligned fashion.
No, absolutely. And I think we're right on the precipice of some great works to come out, because the question comes down to, is it working? Are we saving lives? Is this, the best course of use of these resources? And we've been able to prove some great stuff through case studies. And I'm proud to say in San Antonio, this is kind of a big factor when it comes to the blood centers viewpoint. Mass transfusions have gone down dramatically when you cross compare those that receive pre-hospital blood closest to point of injury versus when we only gave saline. Really, really interesting article in the Journal of Acute Care and Surgery, August of 2023. That excellent read. And one of the findings was that mass transfusions were reduced dramatically in the San Antonio area, because I felt like we were getting ahead of the curve. Additionally, it's very hard to quantify, but I would hypothesize that ICU stays are reduced. Talking about great ripple effects that are very difficult, like I said, to prove per se, but great for patient care and great for long-term outcomes.
100%. We do have a question. I'm really excited to share this question with you. It's actually from Ukrainian medics, someone who posted an amazing talk. Thanks for sharing. How much time does it take from establishing the need to transfuse to transfusion? Maybe you've counted on average how faster is the transfusion delivered to the patient due to your program?
Oh, so the blood that I have is with me in the truck. So it's instantaneous once we determine the patient's in hemorrhagic shock and we establish access. We will transfuse through IV or IO. But once the access is established, the transfusion itself through the warming device is going to take anywhere from 2.5 to 5 minutes, kind of depending, like I said, on what your access point is. So you see some very remarkable results very quickly. We only carry one unit in San Antonio because we are an urban system, but I know a lot of more rural systems may have two or more for longer transports and so forth. But yeah, once we realize it, the supervisor gets to the scene and it gets done.
Yeah, great question. I know that EMS providers and their medical directors do come up with guidelines based on really signs and symptoms, but there's definitely an idea of when and how to transfuse. Because I had a transfusion medicine medical director say, well, are they going to be over transfusing? And I said, well, they've got guidelines, they know what they're doing. So no, I don't think so.
That's absolutely correct. Yeah, I do think there is some professional discretion, but we have our guidelines for San Antonio. It's a shock index of 1.22 or greater with a hemorrhagic shock or any systolic under 70. And we will transfuse also for a low end tidal CO2 reading, kind of as a precursor to someone going into decompensated shock. But no, we've got our regulations and our guidelines, and we have our med director to contact, if we're in doubt. But I do think that our standards those are very, very sick patients. A shock index of 1.2 is someone that really is not in great shape. So I don't think we over transfuse to the point now where physicians, when we have patient handoffs, will be confused if someone looks like they were in need and they didn't get one. It's almost just considered the standard here now. So we're proud of that, I guess. It's something we're aiming for.
Exactly. That's what Chief Banks actually shared with us, is that he thinks that you may be under transfusing, because you don't want to pull the trigger. You want to be judicious. You want to make the right choices. And you spoke about this a little bit, but that's that you're transfusing also situations where there's medical bleeding. And sometimes medical bleeding can be internal bleeding. So again, you're going to have to make very smart decisions in those situations. It's not like you see blood all over the floor, God forbid, but these are also individuals that are having post-surgical bleeding. And, you're going to have to understand and figure that out as well and provide transfusions in those settings.
No, absolutely. It can be very complex at times. And you're always going to have some situations that are going to give you pause. We will transfuse to pediatrics. I know there's a lot of discussion about that. In our guidelines, we go down to 6 years old, and under that, we'll contact our med director and kind of give them the scene, the lay of the land. In San Antonio, our range has been from 2 years old to 97. So we've run the gamut for sure. But it is I think you get more sophisticated as time goes on with those patients that qualify and will benefit.
Well, Lieutenant Bullock, you've given us such a beautiful, comprehensive discussion today. We talked about history. We talked about the process. We've talked about the consortium and the individuals it takes to make this successful. We talked about the yes mindset. We've focused on our heroes, our donors, and about the future of how we're trying to grow this and make this more accessible. Did I leave anything out that you wanted to share before we finish and wrap up?
No, it was wonderful to speak with you, Dr. Hermelin. A true honor. I have given kind of portions of this conversation we had at different times and venues. I was fortunate enough to speak at Thor this year about GI bleeds, a little different than than a lot of trauma talks that are there, but to put it all together, really a tremendous blessing. And I thank you for providing the audience so that I can honestly talk about all the great things that are going on with all of these folks. Like I said, I'm just one cog in the machine and really the beneficiary of all this hard work. But I want everyone to know down in South Texas, we are always ready and willing to help. You just reach out and we'll get you to the right person that will help you. And we can move this forward.
You definitely shared that there are so many people that have been involved in this, but you're also very humble. So I just want to thank you truly for being an ambassador for this Hero in Arms program, how much effort you put into this. And truly thank you for all that you do and all the lives that you saved and, the graciousness you offer with, anytime I reach out to you, you always are ready to help. So thank you publicly for all that you do. And it's the day after, but again, happy Early Responders Day. You deserve many, many, many of these medals for all the lives that you've saved. So thank you so much for joining us today. And I want to thank our audience for listening. Thank you for joining us and listening to this discussion about the South Texas Hero in Arms Whole Blood Program. I wish everybody a wonderful day, great rest of their week, and take care.